Are you happy?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I think I'm probably the happiest person I know.
I'm just
I think
mind blown by all the things that you're doing.
it's all just fun. It's all about building the life that you love.
Hey, do you need an intro? Do you want to introduce yourself?
Hi, my name is Ali, and I'm also a YouTuber, I guess.
Yeah.
And we've just met in London for the first time. Mm-hmm. And you've been on my podcast.
Yes. Ali, why do you wake up happy every morning?
Oh, why do I wake up happy every morning?
And how does one go about waking up happy every morning?
So I think the biggest shift for me was, well, there was a big shift when I quit my job and became a YouTuber full time. Mm-hmm. But I feel like that is sort of a level above, beyond where a lot of people are at.
Yeah.
A big shift for me was in changing the way that I approached my work.
Okay.
Because I remember when I was a medical student, I would often wake up happy, and a lot of my friends wouldn't. But I feel like there was some sort of difference in the approach to the work, where I was just a lot more chilled out about it, and a lot more like, hey, university is supposed to be fun. Let's try and enjoy the journey as best as we can. Because I think often the experience of enjoyment is like a choice that you can make rather than a position that you find yourself in. I don't know if you vibe with that at all.
Okay, well, so how does one go
I'm
about...
not sure I understand.
Oh dear.
So how does one go about having that mindset and actually believing the words that you're telling yourself, of being like, yeah, university is supposed to be fun. How do you actually believe what you're saying instead of just saying it?
Yeah.
I think a lot of people try to like work with affirmations or things like that, and then they just don't believe themselves saying that.
So I think for me, it's always been about finding a way to make things fun. So like if we take a step back, it's like if you're doing something and you're finding it not fun, then is it an option to not do the thing? Because if that's an option, you can choose to just not do the thing. But for a lot of people, let's say you're a student and you have to do certain subjects even though you don't necessarily like them. And it's like, okay, cool. Now that I know that I'm doing the thing, how do I find a way to make it more enjoyable or make it more energizing? And I think the word energizing is better than the word fun or enjoyable, because like not everything can be fun all the time.
Okay.
But generally I find that there are lots of things we can do to make stuff become more energizing rather than draining. Because draining stuff is not fun at all.
Yeah. Okay, so how does one start? Let's say that let's take university as an example. Where does one start and even thinking, okay, how can I make this thing be more enjoyable or more energizing?
Yeah.
Someone who doesn't even know, like, do I buy nicer books or do I study with my friends? Like, how do you even go about coming up with ideas for making things more energizing?
Absolutely. So I think, I can't advise other people, but the way that I do it is I look through everything I'm doing and I ask myself, will this thing energize me or will this thing drain me? And I generally have a pretty good idea. Or if I don't, then I'll try it out and see how did I feel about that afterwards. So I found at university, for example, going to anatomy lectures at like 9 a.m. was super draining because I was always super tired, and I just chose not to go. Or, for example, going to practicals where it was compulsory and I couldn't choose not to go, it was a case of like, okay, this thing currently drains my energy. How do I engineer it in a way that it becomes more energizing?
Okay.
And certainly doing it with friends is one strand of this.
Okay.
And I sort of have like a 3-part method for this, if we want to go into that.
Yeah, totally.
So essentially it's just 3 Ps. There are 3 Ps that make anything energizing.
Love
4,
this.
but like 3 are the ones that we can think about. Power, play, and people.
Ooh.
Yeah,
Okay.
the 3 Ps.
Explain
The
that.
3 Ps of energy.
Well, how does that work?
Okay, so
Oh, wait, sorry. Is this applicable to anything like work?
everything.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, 100%. Everything can be made more energizing by incorporating power, play, and people.
Ooh, I love that. Okay, what is that?
So, power is... so if we take a step back a bit, like... there's this idea in psychology, like in intrinsic and extrinsic motivation. Like extrinsic motivation is when you're doing something because of the reward you're going to get for it. Like I'm studying not because I enjoy the thing, but because I want to get a good grade, because that's the thing I care about.
Yeah.
Versus intrinsic motivation, which is sort of what you and I have for making videos, which is that we're doing the thing because you enjoy it.
Yeah.
And you can kind of manufacture intrinsic motivation by incorporating power, play, and people into making something sufficiently energizing and fun that you actually want to do it, rather than feel like you have to do it. And some of this is like, a bit of mindset shifting. Like you can choose to tell yourself the story that instead of, I have to do this, I get to do this. And that's one way of feeling more power in a situation.
Okay, so it's about feeling like you have the power.
Yeah,
Is
like
that what the
having,
piece
yeah,
is?
exactly, having the feeling of power,
Oh,
autonomy,
okay.
control,
Okay, like no one
choice.
is forcing me to do this. It's not mandatory.
Yeah.
I have the power. I'm choosing this.
Exactly. And so
Okay.
part of that is actually just genuinely telling yourself that enough times so that you believe it. Like, hey, I don't have to do this. I get to do this, or I choose to do this.
Okay.
But another thing you can do to get power in a situation is like, I mean, if we use a student example, like find a way to craft your own curriculum. So like when I was younger, I had a bunch of friends who had piano lessons, and they all hated their piano lessons because they had to follow the defined curriculum. They had to do what the teacher told them to do. But the ones who I knew who enjoyed playing the piano, and this is why I enjoy learning the piano, is because I just craft my own curriculum.
Okay.
And John Mayer talks about this when it comes to learning music theory. Music theory is really boring to learn, but his thing is like, look, just find a song that you love to play, and then try and understand why the song was constructed that way. And now you're teaching yourself music theory, and you have more power in that situation because you're choosing your own curriculum. And we can do that with, anatomy in medical school, where I can choose to not attend the lecture and actually just find a way to teach it to myself in a way that's more fun for me, rather than by following the textbook. And there's always like multiple ways of skinning the cat.
Okay, so part of it might then be to think outside of the box.
Yeah, absolutely. And just thinking a bit more creatively about how you can feel more of a sense of autonomy, a sense of choice, a sense of power in a situation.
Right.
Just immediately makes the thing more energizing, because autonomy is one of the drivers of intrinsic motivation. Like generally, no one likes doing what they're told.
No.
But if you have to do the thing anyway, you need to find a way to make it seem as if you're doing it off your own back.
Yeah.
Or like doing your own mini project within it, or even, fine, I have to learn anatomy, but you know what? I'm going to draw little pictures of each nerve. Or I have to do anatomy, but you know what? I'm going to color code in my notes so that I feel the sense of pride that I'm taking in this thing. I feel more power. Makes anything more energizing. Anything in the world is magic.
I've never thought of it like that because I feel like a lot of people, we just assume that things should be, let's say, learned the way that you're told they should be learned.
Yeah.
I've never thought of it like that.
Yeah. They're not interested in making learning fun for you. They're interested in I used to be a physiology tutor at Cambridge, and I was very interested in how do I make this fun for the students. But if it's a professor and they've got their research commitments and they don't really want to teach because the teaching is a bit of a faff for them, and they just have this 2-week period where they have to get through the lecture course, they're probably not thinking creatively about how to make this fun for the students.
No.
And so you've got to do the creative thinking for yourself. Make it fun for yourself. Add more power.
Love that. So how do you distinguish, or when do you, let's say you're trying to make your job more fun. When do you know that it's time to actually change something completely?
Yeah.
Whereas I can actually make this more fun. Because that can be a bit difficult. It can be like, how do you know, okay, I can actually make my work a bit more fun if I just change these things and give myself more power, or this is a sign that I should actually switch majors or careers. Like how do you define that?
Yeah, it's really hard, and it is massively like context dependent. Like people who are if you have like a big safety net with your family or whatever, it's a lot easier to make the switch.
Yeah.
Almost at a whim. The way I would think of it is that if you're doing something that you don't enjoy, have you taken the steps to try and make it more fun or more energizing? Have you incorporated power playing people into the thing? Once you've tried all those things and it still doesn't work, at that point you're like, all right, cool, let me think about changing jobs.
Okay.
But I don't like a lot of the narrative that you hear in like books and YouTube sometimes, which is, if you don't enjoy your job, it's quit your job and find your passion. Because I think that's just like, if you have a silver spoon in your mouth, then it's easy for you to play a guitar for fun.
That's
but like,
generally not great advice.
Yeah, like realistically,
Yeah.
we have to do things we don't necessarily enjoy, but we can find ways to make it energizing.
Okay. So that's power.
That's power.
What's the next P?
The next P is play.
Okay, what is that?
This almost directly maps to this idea of making things fun. This is the idea that if you can approach things in the spirit of play, then it just becomes way more energizing.
What does that mean?
So spirit of play, essentially that feeling that we have when we are playing, like playing with friends or like playing an instrument or... It's not quite gamification, which is a bit more like...
I was going to ask if it's like gamification.
I think there are aspects of gamification that are useful, like having a points score or something like that. For example, a friend of mine used to work at a McDonald's drive-thru, and he was like, right, this is boring. How do we make it fun? And basically added a leaderboard to the sort of the drive-thru area, where it was like a bit of a competition between all of the workers to see who can get the bag out the window before the car gets there.
Okay.
Because normally you have to drive up and then they give you the bag, but it's
Yeah.
like, can we make this into a bit of a game?
Oh, okay.
And just automatically, everyone had more fun, because now they're sort of competing against each other. It's a bit of fun. They're sort of playing around with this a bit. This same guy, when he was working at the drive-thru, he set himself challenges like every time. And so this is the thing that you can do. You can set yourself personal challenges. For example, this friend, his name is Matthew, in the drive-thru, every day he would try and upsell the customers on a different sauce.
Okay.
So he might be like, would you like barbecue sauce with that? And they'd be like, no, I'm good. And he'd be like, it's really nice. And then usually they'd be like, yeah, all right then. And so he would just have a bit of fun with that. Similarly, when I was working as a doctor, you have to write a lot of discharge letters, which is basically where you write a letter to the patient's GP, general practitioner, explaining what happened to them in hospital.
Okay.
And this involves going through all the notes, and it's generally kind of boring, because you have to do it a lot. You have to do a lot of reading and just type a load of stuff up. But I set myself the challenge of, can I make the doctor on the other end smile? And so I'd include a little bit of banter comment that it was lovely hearing all about Mrs. Smith's cat, or just something like that you wouldn't normally hear in a discharge letter. And then that was fun for me, because now I've added a personal satisfaction challenge to it, which makes it feel more like play, and it puts a smile on the person reading on the other end, because they're like, oh, this is nice.
And what do you tell people who might be scared doing something like that? Like, let's say just writing emails. Sometimes when someone writes you an email and they write you something witty or funny, you're like, ooh, that was so nice.
Yeah.
But sometimes you want to do that, but you're like, ooh, what if that's too much? Or what if it's going to be, like, how do we allow ourselves space to dare to play with the risk of someone not appreciating it, let's say?
Yeah, I think there's always a little bit of a risk.
Yeah.
But often the risk is a lot lower than we think.
Okay.
And to use a different kind of example, I find that generally when people are giving presentations at work, if you're not good at public speaking, you tend to default to being more formal and a bit more stiff and a bit more like, I must memorize my lines, I must like make sure I know
Yeah,
what I'm
totally.
But the people that are really good at public speaking relax the audience. They crack a couple of jokes.
Yeah.
They take it less seriously.
Yeah.
And one of the mindset shifts that I like is something that the philosopher Alan Watts talks about, which is the difference between sincere and serious. And like, if you play a board game with someone, but you take it too seriously, no one likes that. It's a bit draining. It's kind of annoying.
It's boring.
But you want someone to play sincerely. You want them to actually be trying their best, but to keep in the back of their mind that this is just a game at the end of the day.
Yeah.
And there's something about that mindset, sincere and serious. Like, if you approach an email and you're writing it very seriously, compared to if you're writing it sincerely and maybe adding a little bit of a casual twist to it.
Yeah.
Most people appreciate that.
Yeah.
And if they don't, hey,
It's not a big deal.
it's not a big deal. No one's going to complain.
That's true.
Yeah.
Because I think about on my flight here, the pilot was quite funny. You know, when they're talking on the
Yeah.
mic thing, he was like, "Oh, time flies by when you're having fun, and we're almost arriving in London." And he was just so relaxed, and it just made it more enjoyable.
Yeah.
Whereas some pilots, you are just obviously just like, yeah, the weather is looking nice, and we're about to arrive. So I think definitely adding a bit of play it makes everyone's experience typically, like you say, not everyone is going to appreciate it, but typically I think it's appreciated.
Yeah, and it's way better for the pilot. He's done sort of 5,000 flights. He gets a bit bored.
Yeah,
he's like, you know
having a
what?
bit of fun.
I'm going to have a bit of fun with this.
I love
And
that.
most people appreciate it.
Yeah, I think so. What's the final P?
The final P is people.
What's
This is basically where we get, we're all social creatures, even self-confessed introverts.
Yeah.
To a degree, we all have different degrees of how much, like how introverted or extroverted we are. But generally, we all benefit from the energy of people in some way.
Yeah.
So, for example, for me, when I was studying, I would just get a bunch of friends together and we'd just go to different libraries. And that's nice because we're all doing different subjects, but we're all doing our sort of the same Pomodoro sessions, so 25 minutes of work and then a 5-minute break, 25 minutes of work, 5-minute break.
Yeah.
And there's something super nice about that. That's one way of incorporating people. If you can find a way to work with your coworkers or even with, this is why co-working spaces and libraries are great, because you just automatically tap into the energy of the people around you.
Okay.
Another way of incorporating people is to kind of, this is a bit harder. Like, I've got a friend working in retail who, has a great thing where working in retail is kind of boring. You have to kind of stack shelves and stuff. But he made it a point that anytime he saw someone, he would find a way to sort of he would find a way to crack a joke that would make them laugh. And then in a way that was a bit of play. It became a challenge for him. But it's also people, because one of the other things that really drives intrinsic motivation is when you feel that your work has an impact on someone else. And so if you can just remind yourself of the impact your work is having on others, maybe by sharing or kind of teaching other people as well, like you can do as a student, it just makes it more energizing. So we've turned this boring ass anatomy memorizing flashcards into something fun because we're doing it our own way through power, into play because we're approaching it with a sense of lightness and ease, and this is actually fun, and trying to incorporate people by maybe sharing notes with our friends or helping our friends out, or, you know, oh, how about I test you on this flashcards and you test me, or even just working with people around us. And I think a lot of people make the mistake, at least at university, of thinking, I must focus, I must be on my room on my own.
Yeah.
And that's just
and
boring.
You get isolated.
You get isolated, energy drain, like no one likes that.
That's true.
You know, in some doses.
So how do you, because obviously I want to talk about the people thing a bit more.
Yeah.
People are very fulfilling having them in our lives in so many ways. But not everyone is a natural at talking to people and asking people to join them, or to... A lot of people struggle with that, to making friends and all of that. So you feel... Are you a natural? Like, have you practiced? Or
I've practiced, yeah.
What do you feel?
So before I got to university, I was like really socially awkward.
Really?
And I read books about it when I was just before entering university. I
It's
read
so hard
all the books
imagining
about
that
charisma and social
now.
skills, and there's a great book called Superhuman Social Skills by Tynan, which is great.
Okay.
There is Charisma on Command, the YouTube channel, which is also a book. So I read the book initially in like 2014, before they started the YouTube channel. There's the Charisma Myth. There's all these books about learning. There's How to Win Friends and Influence People. There's all these books about social skills that genuinely are really helpful if you struggle talking to people like I did, or struggle being friendly, struggle making friends.
So is that what initially helped you going from being awkward to where you're at?
Yeah, the books really helped. And I think also when I got to university, I was like, okay, there was a friend who was a bit older told me something. He said that you never need to worry about making friends if you can just become the organizer of events. And so it's like, no one's going to invite me to a party because, like, you know, why would they care? Like, you know, I'm not interesting enough to invite to a party. But if I host a movie night in my room for Game of Thrones whenever it's out, and I just message my friends being like, hey, Game of Thrones night happening in my place, 7 p.m., I'll provide pizza, or we'll be having pizza. Some people are going to say yes to that. And then the value you add to the group is in being the organizer. Because everyone wants to do social stuff, but everyone struggles to organize it. So then you don't need the skills of a social extrovert. You just need the skills of an organizer. And generally I find that introverts tend to be good at organizing things. And so, yeah, that's the value you add to the group.
Wow.
Yeah. Organizing study sessions, making a WhatsApp group, be like, hey, if you fancy joining study sessions every now and then, join the WhatsApp group.
So how do you deal with, I guess, just taking that initial step of, let's say you're someone who, let's say you're at school or at work and you want to talk to your coworkers or you want to talk to other students, but there's this barrier of, what if I say the wrong thing, or what if they don't like me, or I don't have anything interesting to say? Do you just do it anyway, or do you, like, is there a mindset that you can use of like a mantra or something that you tell yourself that kind of helps you take that step?
Yeah, I actually do have one of those mantras.
Really?
The thing I tell myself is, everyone is friendly, but you have to go first.
Oh.
Everyone is friendly, but you have to go first.
Love that. That's so good.
And I made this point that anytime I'd sit next to someone new in lectures, I'd be like, everyone is friendly, but you have to go first. And be like, hi, I don't think we've met yet. My name's Ali. And they'd be like, oh, hi, my name's Chloe, or Tom, or whatever. And then, you know, usually at university, there's a few follow-up questions. Oh, what college are you at? What subject are you doing? Oh, like, you know, I haven't seen you around. Like,
Right.
There's some generic questions that are easy enough. But even just that, like, hi, I don't think we've met yet. My name's Ali. It comes across as so friendly and natural and confident, and the other person feels great, and it's great vibes.
I love that.
Yeah, everyone is friendly, but you have to go first.
I'm going to use that for myself.
Because everyone is scared. Everyone is thinking the same thing. Everyone is terrified of kind of making that first comment.
But some people just look so natural and confident that it can be quite intimidating. Even if most people have insecurities and most people aren't as confident as they might seem, I think when you see other people who just seem so effortlessly friendly and cool and, you know, social, that can be quite scary. But I think just reminding yourself that
Yeah.
Part of it is, do you believe in faking it till you make it?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
Really?
There's no difference between real confidence and fake confidence.
Oh, explain that.
Like there just isn't. It just presents as exactly like people have this view that if you fake confident, people can just tell that you're like faking it. No one can tell. Maybe your mum can tell because she's known you, which is why it's so hard to be a new person around your existing friendship group because they know.
Yeah.
Like my friends from school, when we're all together, everyone reverts to their school selves. When I go home to hang out with my family, I revert to my teenage self.
True.
But when you're in a new environment, no one can tell the difference between whether your confidence is real or fake. And so you can simply choose to act as if you are confident. And all it takes is, hi, I don't think we've met yet. My name's Ali. Or something like that.
Well, that's true. Because some people are very much against the concept, I've come to learn, of faking it till you're making it because of what you said. Like, it's going to be transparent and people are going to know and... Yeah.
Yeah, it's like... It's so unlikely to meet someone and think they're just faking that confidence. And if you do, like
It is kind of a weird thing to think.
yeah. Or,
I don't think I've ever thought that of anyone.
Yeah, I've almost never thought that. Or if I have, it's kind of like everyone thinks Botox is really bad because the only people you see are the ones for whom it's gone really, 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 really bad. But actually, like 100% of celebrities have Botox, but when it's done well, you can't tell. It just they just look good. And so when you see someone who's faking confidence, the 1 in 1,000 people you might see who's like being way too much with it, or just kind of goes up to a girl, just like super weird, that really colors. But you forget that 900 people you've met last week are all faking confidence, but you just have never noticed because there's no difference between real and fake confidence.
Right. Why do you think so many people struggle with confidence?
This is not an original thought. So back when I was 16, I was. It's a bit of a tangent, but it's going somewhere. I was 16 and we just gotten our GCSE results. So this is one of the exams you take, like O-levels. And me and my mum went to see the headmaster because he was like, oh, congratulations, you got all these good grades, blah, 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 blah. And he was like, what do you want to do at university? And I said, I want to apply to medical school. And we had a bit of a chat. And afterwards, he said to me, like, look, I need to give you some feedback. You're not going to like to hear this, but like it's important for you to hear because no one else is going to tell you. And he basically said that based on the way that I presented to him, I would have no chance of getting into med school. He said, you've got the grades, but you don't come across as a confident, charismatic, likable person, which is the sort of person that they want to have in med school. Ooh. And he was like, you've got 2 years to change that because you're applying in 2 years.
Okay.
And so I decided at that point that I was going to start taking more risks. I made a point that every single class, I was going to put my hand up and ask a question. Every time we went to a talk or a lecture, I would put my hand up and ask a question. And that helped me flex that muscle of being a bit more out there. But I also started doing close-up magic and kind of performing at I volunteered at the local nursing home. And these old people, they were a captive audience. And so, but they liked it. I was a kid, 16, 17 years old, doing like card tricks. But the reason I mention all that is actually there's 2 points there. One point is that 3 years ago, I went to a YouTuber conference in Ireland where Peter McKinnon was on stage and there were a load of people on stage. And every talk, I would ask the question. And I was known as he's the guy who asks the question.
Really?
And loads of people were saying to me, I wanted to ask that question, but I felt shy. How did you have the confidence to ask the question? And I think just having worked on it for like a decade of making it a point that anytime I'm doing something, I have to ask a question, helps me engage with the speaker more and helps flex my confidence muscle. But the second point there is that one of the magicians that I learned from was a guy called James Brown, who has I had this YouTube video at the time or something around how to be more confident. Because as a magician, I was one of the things I did was I'd perform at parties and you have to go to a group of people and say, hi, I'm a magician. Do you want to see a magic trick? That's really freaking scary. That's way scarier than hi,
terrifying.
This is a lecture. What's your name? He had this thing called, I can't remember what it was called, but his whole model was that confident, the reason, and this is how it relates to your question. Yeah. The reason why we feel unconfident is because we mistakenly feel that confidence is a thing that has to be earned, that you have to acquire confidence somehow by doing stuff. And it's like, what is that stuff? Well, I don't know, repetition or whatever. But what this guy said, and he used to train magicians, he was like, you can simply choose to see confidence as a thing that you turn on or off. It is not a thing you need to acquire. It's not a thing you need to work towards. You can simply choose to be confident. And he's the one who said there's no difference between faking it and real confidence and fake confidence.
Okay.
And so I think part of the reason people struggle with it, social anxiety aside, because that's like a separate issue, but outside of those like situations, people struggle with it because we think it's a thing that you have to that you have to struggle with. And again, this is why the power of the mind, neuroplasticity, simply by changing the way we feel about confidence, that really helped me in leveling up my own.
Well, how much do you think is, because one thing that gives me confidence is simply knowing what I'm doing.
Yep.
Like learning the material or practicing the speech or whatever it is. But I feel like some people don't even need that. And like, let's say they're having a speech and they haven't practiced enough, but still they go up there and they just kind of freestyle and they come up with whatever and it's charming everyone and everyone is believing it. Do you feel like is that something that you think can be practiced where you can just making that switch in your mind of I can do this despite the circumstances?
Yeah. So I think when it comes to going on stage and giving a speech, that's like an actual skill. That's not a thing that, like, if I put someone on the team hasn't had that much experience just on stage and said, talk to me about X, it would be hard. Like that's a tangible skill. I think I'm pretty good at that, having practiced it a lot. Who was I listening to? There's a chap called Brendan Burchard has a book called High Performance Habits, which I was reading the other day. He actively, he talks about how like intentional mastery is a thing that can be achieved with public speaking through just like repetition and like actively practicing the skill. And for example, the first time you do a speech, you try and memorize it. The next time you do a speech, you try and just have a few notes in front of you. The next time you do a speech, you have no notes at all. And you're slowly putting yourself outside your comfort zone. There are some people that just come out of the womb knowing how to give a public speak. That's unusual.
Yeah.
Mostly people who are good at speaking have practiced the skill of speaking. So in that sense, when there's a skill, it's hard to just fake it.
But when it comes to like speaking to people in school or at work, that's...
Yeah, I think that's also a skill. So I think everything is a skill and everything can be learned.
But you have to practice.
Yeah. And taking that first step is a thing you can just choose to do. And I find that remembering that there's no difference between real and fake confidence is just really helpful, at least for me.
And what's your mindset for being okay with embarrassing yourself? Like if you were to walk up to someone and they're just like, hi, and not interested or kind of not responsive and not interested. How do you, because some people would take that and overthink it and be like, I embarrassed myself and now they're going to think I'm a weirdo. How do you do you brush it off? Or how do you react when you're approaching someone or just when you feel like this was quite embarrassing? Do you brush that off? Or how do you do that?
I mean, again, this is really hard. Like very few people have that just such thicker skin, and the ones that do are complete like sociopaths. Because like I've been doing a bunch of research into this for my book. The whole evolutionary thing, the fear center of the brain, the amygdala, is very attuned to social threats. Because yes, if you have a tiger running at you, fine, you got to run away. But actually, back in the day, in our evolutionary past, being ostracized from the group was basically a death sentence. Yeah. And so if the alpha male didn't like you, or if you had a falling out with the rest of the group, you're screwed. Like you're eaten in the next prowling of the lion. And so we're so attuned to these social threats that when we feel like embarrassed or we feel like ostracized from the group in any way, it feels really, 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 really bad. Yeah. And getting over that is generally about practice. This is why, guys, like dating advice for guys is generally, look, just like go and talk to a lot of people because you need to inoculate yourself against rejection. And the more you do that, the more immune you become to social threats and social embarrassment. And it's really hard. I'm still not great at that. I haven't practiced very much, but I know people who made it a mission to go to strangers on the street and ask for the time, or go to strangers on the street and ask for directions, and slowly built up the courage to go to a girl on the street and ask them out on a date, and just sort of slowly, baby steps, becoming immune to rejection. Yeah. But that's usually that's a sort of thing that most people don't do.
I think there's definitely something to be said about practicing, because I know, like for me, filming in public has always felt
I hate
awkward.
That. Yeah.
You do too?
Yeah.
And so, but I've been thinking, like when I'm traveling and stuff, I want to be able to vlog, and so I have to get to a point where I'm comfortable enough where I can do that. And now I've gone from just when you're holding a camera, kind of like shy, like you don't really want anyone to see. You're like, hey guys, and to now, yesterday I was having dinner and I was by myself and I set up the camera on my Gorilla Pad and I was just filming myself eating. And like 3 months ago, I would have never done that.
Yeah.
So there's definitely something to be said about just practicing and then things just, you're just going to stop caring
Yeah,
somewhere along the way.
absolutely. Everything's a skill. Everything can be learned.
Yeah, totally. So, okay, building a life that you love waking up to. What are some routines that you think are adding value to your life that more people should do or consider? That are like where you think this is something that I have to do. This is like non-negotiable for me.
So I think in general, I don't like having non-negotiables. Kind of like how we were talking about how you don't like having labels, because it boxes you into a somewhat unnecessary way of thinking. Like if I think I have a morning routine where I wake up, I make a coffee, I have a shower, I do some meditation, I do some journaling. But if I don't do that one morning, I don't want to feel like my whole day is shot, which I might do if I was overly attached to that routine. I think journaling is like super helpful. This is some of the stuff you talk about. Check out Lana's Skillshare class on journaling.
Oh, thank you.
Journaling has been one of the big level ups in my life in helping me. Like I often do ask myself the question of like, am I, I phrase it different ways, but this idea of am I building a life that I love? Or, how content do I feel with life on a scale of 0 to 10? And if the answer is anything but 10 out of 10, I think, okay, why is that? And then I try and drill down to, is it sort of work, relationships, health? Generally, those are the three big areas. Cool. What can I do to get my own contentment levels up? And again, I think so much of it is, even when I'm in a situation where I don't have much control, the way that I approach it allows me to feel more content with it.
Okay.
To which my mum would say, I'm just telling myself a story that's making me feel better. To which I'd say that's literally the point. Like, of course I'm telling myself a story that's going to make me feel
Yeah, that's
better.
not a bad thing.
Yeah.
But if you were to share some practical routines or rituals, or just because especially as someone who, you seem like you have a reasonable amount of, discipline and like you're getting through your day doing, managing a team and doing a lot of things, and yet you remain seemingly happy and
it's great.
excited about life. So what do you think are some things that are making you stay grounded and energized, especially because you seem like you're someone who has a lot of energy? And
Yeah. Honestly, I think it's just those 3 Ps. Like whenever I have to do something that is going to drain my energy, or that does drain my energy, I think this is a problem. Let's change it. Let's either change the situation or change my approach to the situation, because one of those things I can control, or at least one of those things I can control.
Okay. Do you want to share what we talked about on the podcast about what are some things about identifying things in your life that you want to fast forward?
Oh, yeah, this is...
Because I thought it was so interesting, and that's something that I want to do for myself.
So this is a strategy that sociologists use to run studies where they try and understand, is someone's life worth living in their view? And so one way of doing that is being like, hey, Lana, is your life currently worth living? To which you'd probably be like, that's a really weird question. Like, but yes, of course it is worth living, and you would tell me to go away. But another way of doing that is by saying, hey, Lana, you're taking part in my study. I'm going to ring you up at like 20 random points throughout the day, and I'm going to ask you, what are you currently doing? And then I'm going to say, like, if you could press a button to fast forward to get to the end of this experience without experiencing it, would you choose to press the fast forward button? And then you look at what percentage of people's days would they choose to fast forward. And most studies tend to find that at least office workers in the US would fast forward most of their workday.
Yeah.
And that means that, like, I don't know, 50%, like 30%, 40% of your life, you would rather not experience it than experience it.
That's so much.
And so, yeah, that's a lot.
Yeah.
And that seems pretty grim.
Yeah, it really does.
And so this is something that I have a particular allergic reaction to, that whenever I feel like I'm doing something that I would choose to fast forward, I think, hang on, can I either change this thing, or can I change my approach to this thing to make it into an experience that I actually enjoy? And sometimes that's like little things like, I can't be bothered to do the dishes, but it feels a bit wrong to outsource it. So, you know what? Let me mindfully do the dishes, and like really paying attention and really trying to be, like, again, taking power, playing, doing the dishes with friends with music in the background. It just makes it into a bit more of a fun experience. And maybe still I choose to fast forward it, but like I'm at least enjoying it a little bit more.
So would you say that the goal, or one way of living a life that you truly enjoy is to have as few things as possible that you would fast forward.
Yes. I think that's spot on.
Love that.
Yeah. And then it's so easy to identify. You just look at your calendar and be like, or anything you're doing, would I choose to fast forward this? Like, I wouldn't choose to fast forward this because this is just fun.
Yeah.
And so if I can build my life around experiences that I would not choose to fast forward, you know, like most parents wouldn't choose to fast forward spending time with their kids.
Yeah.
You wouldn't choose to fast forward spending time with your dog.
No.
But you might choose to fast forward editing a video.
Yeah.
Maybe, or at least some aspects of
Yeah,
it.
yeah.
And that would be a thing I'd be thinking, could I outsource at least the bits that I don't like? So I can spend my time playing with the dog instead, or reading a book instead, or doing memoir journaling instead.
Okay. Thank you for
Potentially,
the point.
yeah. Just saying.
So how much of our lives do you think is, like, because what I'm thinking right now is it really possible making everything enjoyable? Like, is it okay to have a portion of our lives that is just, isn't much fun and that we would want to fast forward and that we can't make
Yeah.
more enjoyable? Like, do you think there is, not a ratio necessarily, but
Yep.
a portion that is just like, it's fine to have 10% of your life being kind of mundane and that you can't make, or that you can't make more enjoyable? Or do you really genuinely believe that everything, even making the dishes or doing the dishes, just can be more fun?
I think it's something to aspire to.
Okay.
Whether you hit 100% is almost irrelevant, but like, at least for me, that's my goal. And I know that, like, obviously this massively depends on your circumstances. A lot of times people will have things in their life that they just have to do, even though they would fast forward it because you've got to support the family. Like, we all have to play with the hand that we're dealt.
Yeah.
But this is at least how I'm thinking about it. And yeah, if I would choose to fast forward an experience, I have two options: either change it or change my approach to it. And if both of those don't work, then okay, fine. Like, yeah. At that point, your hands are tied.
Are you happy?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I think I'm probably the happiest person I know.
Wow.
But I was interviewing someone called Cliff, who's a friend of mine, last week on the pod, and he said that he was the happiest person he knows. So he and I often share notes on what habits and routines we do that drives our happiness.
Can I be part of that group?
Of course, yeah.
Sounds amazing.
Are you the happiest person you know?
I don't know.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
I don't think so. No, I wouldn't say I'm the happiest person I know. But what makes you so happy? Like, if you had to identify.
Yeah,
like,
I mean,
or is it things, or is it just, what do you think is driving that happiness?
I think there's some level of good fortune in terms of, you know, accidents of birth and having the right amount of genes that lead to happiness, and having sufficient privilege in my life that I haven't really had anything majorly bad happen to me.
But so many people
Yeah.
have all of that and they would not identify as the happiest person they know.
Maybe.
So, I mean,
Yeah.
of course, those are so important.
Yeah.
So important, but
I mean,
what else is there to Ali Abdaal's happiness?
I
What's
mean,
the secret?
I suspect I've definitely read more books about happiness than anyone else I know.
Do you think that's contributed to?
Oh yeah, absolutely. It's like, you know, you and I have probably watched loads of videos about how to make YouTube videos.
Right.
Compared to people in the audience, if someone's sitting there thinking, I want to start a YouTube channel, they probably haven't watched 1,000 videos on how to do YouTube or how to edit. And so the fact that you and I consume this information means we do the thing. Similarly, I have found that reading books about happiness, reading books about social skills, reading books about confidence, reading books about stoicism, all of these things, just, yeah, I apply. I mean, well, when someone writes a book, generally they do a lot of research goes into a book.
Yeah, you would know because you're writing a book.
Yeah, so you're getting like literally years of someone's effort in a thing that you can read in maybe a day or two. So the ROI on those is just incredible. But I think it's one of those weird things, like, you know, if someone is unhappy, the jump to, okay, let me read books about happiness and figure this out. So that's a bit of a weird jump. Most people would think it's because of my situation, it's because of XYZ. But of course, I have a very sheltered and privileged life. So.
Okay, so what's one book you would recommend on happiness?
Happy by Darren Brown is my favorite, which is basically about stoicism. It's a little bit hard to read because it's quite like dense and long. It's really good, but it's a bit dense and long. So William Irvine's The Guide to the Good Life, which is about stoicism, would be second on my list, especially if you can't sit through Darren Brown's prose.
So it seems like a lot of stoicism.
Oh yeah,
Do you think that's helped you a lot?
I think so, yeah. Yeah, I first discovered stoicism, I think, when I was like 17 or 18. And that just really helped me get tools for maintaining happiness, even in more stressful times.
Okay.
Again, with a caveat that I haven't really had anything bad happen to me. So
Yeah.
it's like,
Yeah.
yeah.
I don't think I've ever heard anyone identify as the happiest person they know. So I'm very fascinated about that. And I feel like I have a lot of questions, or I feel like I want more of an answer to, because I think everyone would love to feel like that.
Yeah.
Like everyone would love to wake up and be like, I'm the happiest person that I know.
Okay. So I would love to wake up and have six-pack abs,
Okay.
but I put zero thought and effort into it.
Okay.
I
So
don't
you
go
think
to the gym.
happiness is
Yeah.
effort?
Yeah. Beyond the baseline of like, even, it's sort of like with working out. Unless you take steroids, you are capped by your genetic potential as to how big you can get. And but there's a lot you can do to get to your genetic potential. I think similarly, at least from what I've read about the happiness research, there is like a genetic baseline. But there is stuff you can do to relative to your genetic baseline to raise that number.
Okay.
And those are the practices, the gratitude journaling. The journaling is like, I think there was a study that showed that like just writing down 5 things you're grateful for is the equivalent of doubling your salary in terms of the amount of happiness points it adds to your life.
That's crazy.
Yeah, it's mental, and
Yeah.
most people don't journal. It's just free happiness.
Yeah.
I think also like anticipating events, like actively
Okay.
looking forward to things. We
Okay.
talked about the importance of alone time.
Yeah.
But when I schedule it in my calendar, and this is the thing I started doing last week, I'm just like, sick. The fact that it's in my calendar means I can look forward to it, and that's free happiness points. And I was just saying this to the team, guys, I've just discovered a hack for more free happiness points. And like, I don't know anyone else who thinks about happiness points in that way other than my friend Cliff, who is also the happiest person he knows.
So is that scheduling things? Do you think that's a good way of looking forward to things in your life, of having them actually put in a calendar?
Yeah, so for example, this evening, I have a dinner with Tommy, who's sitting over there, and we're going to talk about some YouTuber Academy stuff. That's in the calendar. And so every time I look at my phone, I see, oh, that's coming up. And so it just gives me a little bit of happiness points in looking at it.
I like the way of seeing it as happiness points.
Yeah, anticipation is free happiness. It's like, again, there's some kind of study that showed that the 2 weeks before a holiday give you more happiness points than the actual holiday. Because,
I think I heard that somewhere.
yeah, a lot of the value of a holiday is in the looking forward to it. This is something my English teacher used to say when I was like 12, that the key to a happy life is to have something to do, someone to love, and something to look forward to. I think it's great advice from Miss
so
Machin
nice.
back in year 8.
You remember her name. I love that.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Okay, we have some questions.
We have questions. Oh,
think
yes, you
so.
put out a thing on Instagram,
I
didn't you?
did. All right. So one question is, how do you stop comparing your life to others?
Oh,
I think that's a big happiness thief.
yes,
That reduces happiness points.
it does, comparing your life to others.
Do you do it?
I do. I always
Okay.
catch myself when I do.
Okay.
Because I recognize that feeling of envy when I have that feeling. Of like, oh, that person's life seems really cool.
So what is it typically that you compare? Like, what things make you feel like, oh, I wish I had that?
So these days, the things I compare are if essentially someone is running a business that's doing better than mine, or someone has sold a business and has just made tens of millions of dollars overnight. My instinctive response there is to think, oh, that's cool, I want that. But I think, as we talked about in the podcast,
Yeah.
beyond the instinctive response, which we can't control, we can choose our subsequent responses. And so I'll recognize that thought pattern in myself and be like, do I really think that? Like, do I really want to go for a startup that has a $50 million exit? Maybe one day, but not right now. Right now, I'm enjoying this YouTube thing. And I can change the story I tell myself about it.
Okay.
I think this is how things like CBT work. You catch a thought process, and then you pause, and then you reframe the narrative. And this is how people get over like really intense trauma as well. It's just basically the same thing, but just with a professional guiding the process, because it's a lot harder. Yeah,
Okay.
changing the story.
Okay. So I feel like a lot of things for you when it comes to happiness
Yeah.
is the story that you tell yourself, and the story you tell yourself about the things that you're doing and the way that you're thinking. So really, it seems like narrative is important when it comes to
Yeah, I think
feeling happy.
Yeah, I think a lot of our experience of the world is colored by the story that we tell ourselves about it. And yeah, just choosing that narrative, I think, is just a ridiculously powerful thing, which Darren Brown talks about in Happy, which a lot of the Stoicism like stuff talks about. There's just so much power in that. And even in the most even in the absolute worst situations, like, you know, Viktor Frankl's book Man's Search for Meaning, where he was in Auschwitz and he was a Holocaust survivor.
Great book.
Talked about how, you know, even in those absolutely insane circumstances, the way that he and people that he knew kind of got through it was by kind of finding a story that gave them purpose.
Yeah.
And finding a way to be useful to other people and feeling as if they had a thing that they were there for. And so, like, in our lives, which are ridiculously privileged in comparison, we can absolutely change the story. We tell ourselves about how that coworker reacted, or how that person was a bit mean to us, or whatever that might be.
Wow. Love that.
I could be wrong about all of this. Maybe, I don't know, something bad will really happen in my life that will test the stoicism.
Hopefully not.
But, yeah.
Hopefully not.
I think also practicing while things are good is also a good thing.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
For when things get bad.
Inevitably when things get bad.
Yeah.
So one of the things Stoics do is sort of kind of premeditating adversity. Or kind of, you know, one of the things, I think Epictetus used to say this, that when you're kissing your daughter goodnight, remind yourself that she could die overnight.
That's terrible.
It's not. It sounds morbid, but by reminding
No.
yourself that, like, my daughter could be dead tomorrow morning, it makes you appreciate the experience so much more. You're like, oh shit, I really should, like, instead of having that thought of that email I need to answer in my mind, I should be fully present with my daughter right now while I'm reading her the bedtime story, because it might be the last time that I do. And that's just incredible. Like, I wish I had that thought process more often, but it's a thing that the Stoics knew was a great thing for increasing your happiness points.
Wow. Do you have any final words on increasing happiness points?
Just read books about it. I think every single thing I say has just been stolen from books that I've read.
Yeah.
And so if you are genuinely interested in doing a thing, then reading lots of stuff about the thing is a very good place to start.
Yeah.
And I think it's like that thing, like, I don't really want six-pack abs, because if I did, I'd actually take it seriously and put in the practices and routines to get there. Similarly, I know a lot of people have the desire to be happy, but don't connect that to intentions and actions and habits. And you can find those in all the books, like Happy, or like William Irvine stuff, or in Ryan Holiday's stuff about Stoicism, or in Man's Search for Meaning, or in The Happiness Advantage, or in 10% Happier, or in all of these books, which are all really good.
Yeah.
But people think it's weird to read books about happiness. So, yeah.
I think because a lot of people assume that it's just going to be repetitive stuff like eat well and exercise and
Yeah, all that stuff is true as well.
and-
Like, a lot of evidence that exercising every day is good for your happiness.
yeah, I think, but I think we often look for like a magic solution.
Yeah.
And we don't really listen to advice that sounds too basic. Like we don't actually, I think oftentimes the reason people don't like hearing that is because they think it's too easy. There's no way just going to the gym 3 times a week is going to make me magically happy. There has to be something more to it. So I think we often don't, when in reality, things like eating well, sleeping well, having good relationships, exercising
Yeah.
are actually things that are the baseline, I think, of happiness and
Yeah.
health.
Like,
obviously.
it's really hard to be happy if you're not sleeping well.
Yeah.
And so fixing your sleep is a very important thing.
Yeah.
And then some people would be like, oh, but like my sleep is just bad. It's like, why is your sleep just bad? You spend 8 hours a day sleeping. Like, let's sort it out. Let's look at the 80-20 of what makes sleep good. Lowering the temperature of your bedroom, sleeping at the same time and waking up at the same time every day, not eating a few hours before bed, not necessarily exercising. Like, there's not having caffeine after 3 p.m. There's so much evidence-based stuff around how to optimize these things. And most people also don't imagine their sleep is a thing that they can in fact optimize.
Why do you think so many people kind of accept things as they are? Like, what makes you be someone who is like, okay, I have a problem here, I'm going to read about it and figure this thing out, whereas other people are like, oh, this just is the way that it is? What differentiates?
So Carol Dweck talks about, growth mindset and fixed mindset. And I think I've been blessed that by default from a young age, I was very growth mindset-y. But also I had some good childhood experiences of being like a top performer in my school. And I would find that if I apply my brain to this thing, I will get good marks in the exam. A lot of people have had worse childhood experiences where, for example, a teacher says that, oh, Johnny, you're just not good at maths. And that's like incredibly damaging for Johnny, because now he tells himself the story repeatedly, I'm just not good at maths.
Yeah.
I found myself doing this. This was like 2 years ago, and I remember this distinctively because I think I was writing like an email newsletter or something to the audience. And I said something like, as someone who's not very good at languages, I felt ... And then I was like, wait a minute. Why did I just think I'm not very good at languages? oh, it's because I was in the middle set French in year 7 when I was 11 years old. I didn't do very well in the French exam, and then I was in middle set rather than top set because I was in top set for everything else. And I just told myself the narrative, I'm just not good at languages. I was like, what the hell is wrong with me? Like, of course I can choose to change that narrative. That's such an old narrative. Yeah. And a lot of us hold on to these older patterns of thoughts which are no longer serving us. And this is what therapy does.
Yeah.
You tackle these things like, why do you think that about yourself? It's like, what do you think about it? What do you think in your past caused you to feel that way? It's like, is that still helping you? Nope. Can you choose to change it? Yeah, why not?
Love that.
And then how would I act as if I were actually good at learning languages? Well, I'd be much more open to learning Japanese or learning Mandarin. Great, what's the next step? Let's get the audiobook. Perfect. That's how I taught myself Japanese a little bit. And I've started teaching myself Mandarin through an audiobook.
Wow, you're doing that too?
Just very, very, very casually.
Oh, but still.
Like,
That's quite cool.
Very basic, yeah.
Okay. So narrative seems to be one of the keys.
Narrative, mindset, power of the mind, neuroplasticity, all that stuff. Like,
do you have any books on mindset, or do they kind of overlap with happiness?
Yeah, I think
books?
It does overlap with happiness. So Cliff, this friend of mine, he runs a big company. He's this happiest person. He actually said when I interviewed him on the podcast, the book Mindset by Carol Dweck, which is about this growth and fixed mindset. He said it is the most important book that's ever been published in the English language.
Oh wow!
And I was like, whoa, that's a very strong recommendation.
Did you read it?
I found it a bit dense to get through.
Okay.
But also I was so familiar with the concepts of growth mindset, fixed mindset by that point that it didn't really hit me. But for him, he said that book changed his life because it made him realize the power of mindset.
Okay.
And I mean...
So it might be worth...
it might be worth reading a book about growth versus fixed mindset.
Okay.
Yeah.
Nice.
That's it.
That's amazing.
Guide to happiness in the 21st century.
I love that. Well, thank you so much. Do you want to share any project, things you're working on? You have classes, you have all of these things.
I'm actually going to watch your class on Skillshare because I'm curious about your memoir journaling strategy. Because when we were talking about it on the pod, I was like, oh, damn, that sounds really fun.
Yeah.
So
that'd be amazing.
We'll put a link to that down in the video description.
And I know you have some resources for aspiring YouTubers and all of that.
Oh, yeah.
Share some of...
I teach a course a few times a year that helps people be YouTubers, and you're going to be a guest speaker in the next one. Thank you for agreeing to that.
That's amazing.
We'll put a link to the waiting list down below if you want to check it out.
Yeah, for sure. And all of his links and everything is going to be down below. And that's it.
Thank you. This was great.
Thank you.
Oh, and check out the episode that we did with Lana on Deep Dive Podcast.
Yeah, which might be,
it'll come out around the time of this, maybe around the time of this video.
Yeah, ish.
Yeah, ish.
Amazing.
Cool.